Okay, anti-Messiah dilemma, another video on it. So let's get right into it. The Quran tells you nothing of what it means to be the Messiah, right? Maybe they say coming back, it's prophetically, it's a prophetic fulfillment for him to come back on the day of resurrection. But essentially, other than that, you have nothing of what it means to be Messiah. So this is what you do logically. Logically, you go to what's on the table. You have nothing about messianic claims for Isa in the Quran, but you have something of what the anti-Messiah says. So logic says, let's reverse engineer what it means to be Messiah from the claims of the anti-Messiah. Excuse me. Because the anti-Messiah is meant to act as something of a counterfeit. Like when you have a counterfeit dollar bill, it it resembles the dollar bill in the spaces or in the regards that matter the most. You don't deceive people by doing something that's completely the opposite. You deceive people with lookalikes. The anti-Messiah is a lookalike of the Messiah. So, considering the Quran doesn't tell us much about what Messiah means, just like this is what Messiah means, this is what he says, this is what he does. Besides, Jesus did like signs and miracles. So that checks off. The anti-Messiah also does signs and miracles. That checks off. Now, what are messianic claims? What does the Messiah claim? When he's here, what are claims befitting of the title of Messiah? Come up. What the anti-Messiah says is, I am your Lord. The anti-Messiah claims divinity, right? If the claim to divinity was so far away from what it meant to be Messiah, like if that claim was so insane and so far-fetched from what the Messiah would say, then he is no longer befitting of the title anti-Messiah. I'd argue that him claiming that he is Lord is specifically what makes him the anti-Messiah. And not in just like a villain sense, like, oh, he does the complete opposite of what Jesus says. Once again, the logic of counterfeit is what tracks here. A counterfeit dollar bill doesn't look like monopoly money. That's the logic that a Muslim would want you to have. They would say that the claim to divinity by the anti-Messiah is nothing of a messianic claim, right? So what you're saying is he's a monopoly dollar bill. He looks nothing like the Messiah. If everything else checks off, signs and miracles, all you have is signs and miracles and that he says that I am your Lord. That's all you have from the anti-Messiah, right? That's all that the text tells you, the Hadith and the Quran tells you. If I am your Lord only works as deception because it's adjacent to what the Messiah would actually say. It only works as deception if people expect the Messiah to make these claims. Because if it's let's look at it from this example. If a prophet says that he's sent from God, he prophesizes in God's name, everything checks out, it looks good, maybe some prophecies come to fruition, and then he says, but one day a week you have to worship the devil. That claim, sorry, I ate lunch and it made me mad phlegmy. That claim automatically disregards him as a prophet. That unanimously takes him out of the running for that labeling. He can no longer be called a prophet. In the same way, if I am your Lord is so far away from a messianic claim, then he cannot have the title of anti-Messiah. That title is incoherent if the claim of I am your Lord is so far-fetched from a messianic claim, right? And I think there's another thing as well. Well, the major points have been touched upon. Deception only works if it's a lookalike. Oh, and also, I am your Lord is seen as the climax of the deception, right? Meaning like it's you have signs and miracles, you have all these things, and then I am your Lord is the climax of the deception. It's not something where the deception starts to teeter off because the claim he made is so outlandish. It's the climax. This is where people actually start to believe him even more. If it was so far-fetched, people would just be like, you wouldn't need to be so heavily warned about him. And Muhammad wouldn't be so scared that he has to give you, he's one eye, he's short, he got curly hair, because he's going to say that I'm your Lord. That is more than enough to disregard him, if that is not adjacent to a messianic claim. And the reason why it is because when you look at the hadith, it says that Jesus will come back as a just ruler. Jesus is going to come back as a just judge, actually, as a just judge after the biggest test given to man. The Dajjal, the anti-Messiah, is said to be the biggest test of mankind. So, and Jesus is a sign of the hour. He's a sign of the end of history. He's a sign of the end times, right? So in the end of times, in the end of history, Jesus comes down as a just ruler after the greatest test of humanity has passed, and he's going to destroy the cross, abolish the jizya. So he's judging religion. He's establishing order of religion. He's establishing unity of mankind. He kills the swine, which is Islamic law. So he establishes that as well. He comes as a just judge and establishes this kingdom, this Islamic kingdom, right? This is divine adjacent. Somebody descends from heaven as a just judge at the end of history after the greatest test given to mankind. And he's given the authority to judge. Yeah, this is divine adjacent. This is borderline divine nature at the very least. At the very least, this is borderline divine. And that is why the claim of I am your Lord is fitting for the anti-Messiah. Because, okay, let's put on Islamic paradigm lens. If Jesus comes down, descends from heaven, he was exalted and brought up to Allah, by the way, which is in and of itself already divine, borderline divine. He comes down and he's said to be a just ruler at the end of time. He's not judging souls. Islamic perspective says this is not the day of judgment. This is the day of resurrection. So he comes down as a just judge. He orders everything for the judgment day. So Allah delegates this role of authority, this role of being a judge, this role of ordering everything. A just judge and a just ruler. But he's more than that. This is divine authority. This is not human authority. There's no other man that can attest to having this level of authority. Coupled with all the other honorifics. He's a Messiah. He's a word of God. Allah literally spoke him into existence. He did that with nobody else. Maybe Adam, you can say that. So you have all these things coupled together. Jesus is borderline divine at the very least. And you can't be Muslim and say that. And with that prophecy, that messianic prophecy of him coming back in perspective, the anti-Messiah's claim of I am your Lord makes perfect sense. Because he's, from Islamic perspective, the anti-Messiah is just claiming to be the authority. When Jesus comes down, he's delegated the authority of a judge. He's delegated the authority to judge mankind and to order them all. Essentially, preparation for the judgment of souls. This is borderline divine. If you see someone coming down and he's judging everything, he's getting everything in order, he's not teaching. He's enacting law. He's enacting judgment. There's no room for debate. The Islamic prophecy doesn't say he's going to come down and give teachings. He's coming down, he's establishing rule, and he's abolishing things that are unnecessary. There's no room for debate when he comes down. He's a just judge. This is divine authority given to a man. This is borderline divine. That's why the anti-Messiah claim of "I am your Lord" makes sense, because it is from Islamic perspective, logically, it is the counterfeit to the delegated authority. Why doesn't Allah just do this? This is God's work to be a judge. And you can't say prophets were judged and people were judges, because context matters. What are they judging? Not to this extent, not to this level of divineness. So yeah, I'm just trying to get all my thoughts about the anti-Messiah dilemma out there. And it's good for me to be able to word it as well. But let me see. Is there anything else? Yeah, you can't say that Jesus is borderline divine, but that's what the logic points to. I'm not even bringing up Christian theology. Everything here is from Islamic perspective, coupled with logic. Islam looked at from a logical perspective. Does the logic track? First, you reverse engineer what Messiah means by going to what anti-Messiah says, because there's nothing about what it means to be Messiah just from Isa, just from Jesus. So you literally have to, first of all, the book that's a complete explanation, a perfect explanation of everything, doesn't explain what it means to be Messiah. I have to reverse engineer what it means from the contrast, from the anti-Messiah. I have to learn what it means through contrast. The anti-Messiah says, "I am your Lord." That is a messianic claim, because if it wasn't, giving him the title of anti-Messiah is incoherent. It's logically incoherent. It doesn't make sense. Because all you have from the anti-Messiah is that he performs miracles, signs and miracles, raising people from the dead, and he says that "I am your Lord." These are the two things that make him the anti-Messiah. These are the two things that make him a counterfeit Messiah. These are the two things that a counterfeit dollar bill is an exact lookalike, a seeming exact lookalike of a real dollar bill in all the ways that matter. And him saying, the anti-Messiah saying that "I am your Lord" is a defining claim, giving him the title of anti-Messiah. It's a defining moment. It's a defining moment. That's what defines him as the anti-Messiah. But if it's not a messianic claim, or if it's not adjacent to a messianic claim, he can't have that title, or it's incoherent. Why wouldn't he just be called ultimate deceiver? If that claim is nothing like a messianic claim, the title of anti-Messiah is incoherent. Just call him ultimate deceiver. But that's not the case. Anti-Messiah makes sense, even in the face of the claim of "I am your Lord," because that is adjacent. At the very least, it's adjacent to a messianic claim. This is what people would expect. This is what people expect. You see all these signs and wonders, you expect them to be God. Same with Isa. He spoke from the cradle. He gave life on earth by the permission of Allah. You expect God to do these things. So you expect these claims from the Messiah. Nobody else did the miracles that Jesus did because he was the Messiah. You could say one person did one-off thing, but Jesus did everything. You can like Frankenstein Jesus's rap sheet from other people throughout history, throughout scriptural history, but Jesus encapsulates them all because he's the Messiah. The Messiah is anointed one, set apart, and you can tell from his speaking from a cradle, being born of the word of Allah, a spirit from him, ascending to heaven, giving life on earth, healing the lame, the sick, the blind, everything. Jesus is even the Isa of Quran is borderline divine at the very least. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. The claim the anti-Messiah makes of "I am your Lord" is a messianic claim. Islam, which is not coherent with Islamic perspective, because Islam tried to hijack a term that they had no business hijacking. Islam tried to hijack Jesus Christ. That's the foundation of it. The term that they try to hijack is antichrist, anti-Messiah, but the foundation is they try to hijack and hide Jesus Christ and try to keep components of him. When you're not in truth, these lines of these threads, when tucked at, destroy the whole thing. It's incoherent to have an anti-Messiah that claims that I am your Lord if that's not a messianic claim. So the last major point, I forgot to add it, is all of this concludes that Isa of the Quran is a partner to Allah. He's a partner in judgment. He's a partner in divine authority. Allah delegates this role of authority that is his. He delegates this role of being a judge to Jesus. Not the ultimate judge, not the one who judges souls, but he's a partner in judging. That's the ultimate logical conclusion. I could be wrong, but I think the logic tracks on that. Isa is a partner to Allah. And with that, we put a bow on it. There's actually another thing. So the reason why the anti-Messiah claim of I am your Lord makes sense as a counterfeit Messiah claim is because the Messiah shares in divine authority with Allah. The Messiah is a partner in crime when it comes to judgment, when it comes to judging his creation. The Messiah is a partner. So from the Islamic paradigm, I guess you can say, I can grant that he isn't divine and he isn't God from the Islamic paradigm. But what I cannot grant is that he's not a partner. He is a partner, which is shirk. He's a freaking partner. That's why the claim of I am your Lord from the anti-Messiah is fitting. And it confirms the title of anti-Messiah, false Messiah, because the Messiah has something of divine authority. That's why he's able to judge, because that's what the Messiah does. That's what the anointed one does. That's what the king does. He shares in divine authority. Isa of the Quran is a partner to Allah. Yallah. Yeah, this is really for me, all these extra edits, because I want to get the full message out there. The bow wrapping message is Allah chooses to share in divine authority with Isa. This is, obviously, I don't believe that as a Christian. I believe Jesus is God. But the logic of the Quran, the reason why the anti-Messiah makes claims to divinity, and it makes sense, and it actually has him maintain the title of Messiah, anti-Messiah that is because Isa of the Quran, Allah chooses to share in divine authority with Isa. So he looks divine, he looks like God, but in reality, he's somebody that Allah has chosen to share in divine authority with. And that's shirk, that's partnership. Well, at the very least, Allah assigns Isa divine level authority without divine level sourcehood. So he doesn't claim to be the source of the divine level authority, but divine level authority is granted to him. So either way, which in and of itself is indistinguishable from partnership. So either way, you got a dilemma. So in summary, the reason why the Dajjal's claims that I am your Lord makes sense is because Isa executes divine authority, and the Dajjal claims ownership of it. You see the counterfeit, you see how it works in tandem, how one is an authentic dollar bill and then the other is inauthentic. Isa executes divine authority. Yeah, executes divine authority in judgment, while the Dajjal claims ownership of it. So, okay, this was the last one. All right.